And it's lights out. Welcome to our podcast. I'm your host, Jeanmark, and joining me after this long summer break is this lovely trio, Dominick, Dr. David Kessler, my father, and our great friend, Paola. I put a few polls on Twitter, and we're going to get to those right now. At the head of this podcast. The first poll was, what are we going to call this podcast? Winning the top votes was, call this the non-race reaction. There you go. That's why it's called the non-race reaction. The second poll was during the race, about an hour after the original red flag. I was sitting in my apartment that was like nothing left. We were just cleaning, trying to get out of there with the checkout procedures. And I put out this poll and I said, rain, what happens? Either full race on Monday, 2 safety car laps, half points, or canceled race. Roughly 90 seconds after putting out that poll, 90% of the votes came in, which meant that all of you were on Twitter just like I was, trying to see what was going on because nothing was going on during the race. And then our last tweet was sent about a couple days before because they were supposed to announce the second driver seat at Mercedes. Total Wolf said, well, we're going to wait a little bit. So I put out, with Total Wolf delaying the second driver announcement originally scheduled for the summer break, what percentage do you give Bottas keeping his seat versus being replaced by Russell? 31%, the most said, well, if there's a 25% chance Bottas will keep the seat, and it's all dependent on if he gets more DNFs. And 26% said 0% chance they're merely saving face for Bottas. This was all before Russell put it P2 in qualifying. And so I personally think that Russell, what else can this guy do? He has to get that seat at this point. Dad, what are your thoughts? You've been talking about the Bottas drama like every single podcast.
If he can out-qualify 2 Mercedes, what more does he have to do?
This is a confounding situation for me. I mean, there are only 2 directions you can take this, and yet I can see merits for both sides. We've seen in the past that Hamilton does not like having to drive with somebody who can actually compete with him. And so to have Bottas as that second seat who can continue to wingman for him could be good for him as he continues into this next year. On the other hand, Russell is impressing a lot. And I could see how Mercedes might be more concerned about the constructor standings if they could have 2 drivers that could score high points. I don't know for sure which way they're going to go. I'm kind of leaning more towards Bottas staying at the moment.
And you think that's because they figure that Hamilton has enough to continually win, so they don't want to upset that dynamic?
With everything that's going on, we still have to recognize that at the moment, Hamilton is still first in the driver standings. Right? He can still get the points that he needs, and I know that Bottas has been a little inconsistent of late, but I feel like they're going to want to keep him happy.
So I would have said Russell would have been picked, but I also thought that Gasly might get another chance, and they stayed with Perez. So maybe they will stay with Bottas and make Russell spend a little more time.
That would be really rough because Ferrari has filled both their seats, McLaren has filled both their seats, Red Bull has filled both their seats. I mean, like all the perceived upcoming top teams, Alpine has filled both their seats. Pretty much Russell would have to be content with Williams. But who knows? Maybe Williams gets the new regulations next year right, and he could be fighting up there on a regular basis. Imagine if next season McLaren and Williams were the teams to beat, because Red Bull and Mercedes have been spending so much money trying to beat each other this season. That would be crazy to have Norris versus Russell.
That is indeed a dream.
The ultimate dream would be if Leclerc and Ferrari came out swinging, but they were supposed to be getting an engine upgrade, and that thing looked terrible. But anyways, Paola, what are your thoughts about this whole situation with Russell and Bottas?
I think what's saving Bottas right now is the fact that Mercedes is still up on the constructor standings. But I feel like if they had dropped to second or third place, I think there'd be no question at all that they needed to bring Russell in instead. I think he's hanging by a thread, and that the timing just couldn't be worse for him, like the crash in Hungary and now like really bad qualifying. When things get tough, like when the pressure's on and he really needs to be performing, like he's not keeping it together. I honestly don't know. I'm split. Yes, there's the question of what else could Russell do, but I don't know that just 2 or 3 good races is enough to change an entire team dynamic, fill out an entire different contract team strategy. So I'm on the fence, and Wolf probably is too. So that's why he's taking so long.
This is my personal opinion as to why Perez got picked, is because he has money. He has sponsorships that Gasly wouldn't be able to bring. And so when I think about Russell or Bottas, I don't think of either of those guys bringing really many sponsorships. If Russell was like Latifi in that he had some sort of backing, I wouldn't be surprised if Mercedes would be more likely to bring him on board, because then it wasn't just the racecraft. It would also be influx of cash. This now brings us to our non-race reaction. Paola, start us off with a fun fact.
So for those of us who are still in their first couple of years of enjoying F1 racing, this turns out this is the shortest F1 race in history, surpassing Australia in 1991, where they raced only 14 laps and 33 miles. I didn't know just how common or uncommon this sort of situation was.
I think that race might actually be older than most of us here. They say this is the shortest race. I'm like, it's going to be probably a long time until we get a race that was shorter than this one, I would think.
Do you know why it was so short? They had a rain delay in the previous race, but they went ahead and ran it, and it was like over 6 hours of broadcasting. And so they had to put in these regulations to contract the time so it's more reasonable. I don't remember which race that was.
You're probably thinking of 2011 at Canada. It's a really famous race because Jenson Button won it, but yeah, it took forever. And so they made these rules about, like you said, once the clock starts, it's a 4-hour period. You need to finish your 2 hours of racing within that 4-hour period. And then they waived half of those things. They're like force majeure. That was a new word I learned, which just means like it's a major force, something that you couldn't predict, something that's out of your control, the rain. Since we're going to this theme of a non-race reaction, let's talk about qualifying. Usually qualifying doesn't make a big deal. Well, here, no one was able to pass each other. So whatever you qualified, with the exception of Perez, he crashed out in the lap going to the grid. And this is the reason why he was allowed to have his car fixed and rejoin. Because once you start the formation lap, anyone who crashes, it's, as Michael Massey was trying to tell Red Bull, it's called outside help. And so it was like Verstappen at the Hungaroring last year, where he also crashed in the lap to start the grid, and they were able to fix him on the grid. So Norris, he was fastest in Q1, fastest in Q3, and probably was going to get pole position, but he was the first one out there, full wets, too much rain. He was saying they should red flag. Vettel was saying they should red flag. He comes up on Rouge and loses it. And that was a crazy crash. Paola, what's your whole thought about what happened to Norris?
That was just absolutely heartbreaking to watch. Like you mentioned, he was the quickest all weekend. It's one thing to crash, but then on top of that, like the 5 grid penalty for having to change the gearbox was kind of like a punch in the face. I agree that they probably should have red flagged it sooner.
I think it kind of shows that his lack of used to that high pressure situation. He's used to driving in rain from Great Britain. If you look at 4 of the top drivers that were qualifying, 3 of them were from Great Britain: Russell, Norris, and Hamilton. And so they're used to driving in that, and it shows just a slight error, either a lapse of concentration or miscalculation, can end it.
It was perhaps the most dangerous fast corner in the entire calendar. And he was doing that with rain pouring down the hill. The commentary was pointing out that the Pirelli tires weren't designed exactly for that, and so it caught because it was a little cold. And so that was something that I don't think he could have planned for. Now, he also was the first one out in Q3, which means that there was no one pushing the water off to have a dry line. So he had no line at all. And then also, if you look at the onboard of Russell's really good lap that he put in Q3, he is doing this like all the time. And he almost lost it coming out of Eau Rouge as well. Speaking of penalties, as you were talking about, Paola, Bottas, because of the braking problems that he had at the beginning of the Hungaro GP and taking out a bunch of cars, he had a 5-grid place penalty. Some people were hitting me on Twitter asking, hey, when do you think Red Bull is going to deal with their engine penalties? Because they're going to have to use an engine sooner because they've trashed one. But I think the blessing, this hidden disguise of this race for Red Bull is that it effectively removes a race that they have to use that engine at. So they could actually use their engine a little bit longer. If they can get even one race longer, then that could potentially be a benefit to them because they don't want to take those grid penalties if they're really close in a fight with Mercedes. Last thing we'll talk about was not necessarily a penalty, but it felt like one. Perez, with his crash, team really was trying to fix their car. They talked with Michael Massey to eventually be able to make it allowed because they hadn't started the race. And then the best benefit for that was that if you had Perez on your fantasy Formula 1 team, you didn't lose negative 10 points for a DNF. It meant nothing for the team in real life, but in fantasy, it was nice to only get negative 2 points instead of negative 12 points. Woo. Did any of you guys have Perez on your team? Okay. No. I picked him up because Red Bull was looking strong. Now I regret it. Did any of you guys have Russell on your team? What? I had Russell on the same team that had Perez, so Perez's bad luck was counteracted with Russell. So you had Russell on your team, Paola?
Yeah, I had him. Honestly, I think had they raced, my lineup would have been really good because I had Hamilton, I had Russell, and I had Red Bull. And I think Norris, even though he would have started way behind, I think he would have gained a lot of places, and he was on my team as well.
I think it's a little optimistic, even though Norris is a good driver. With the amount of spray I saw going up, I think it's really hard to pass. I think it would have been another Monaco, except in the rain.
Yeah, and that's why I think Russell was a good pick to have that race, is because normally he loses places, but because, like you said, because of the wet conditions, it was much better for him. I wasn't going to think that he was going to get that high, but I picked him up thinking that he was going to be better than a Mick Schumacher because of being able to qualify stronger. And fun fact, Mick Schumacher has 107 fantasy points for the season. Russell now has 107 points as well. So for the longest time, Mick Schumacher was always the pick. That's why it's even harder. Do you pick Mick Schumacher or pick Russell? Because it seems like Russell, if he's able to avoid losing places and his driving has improved, then I might actually switch over from Mick Schumacher to maining Russell as my fifth driver. Which now brings us to our championship standings. You will notice on the championship standings that there are half points, and that's because this race did not finish 75% of the laps needed. It's actually one of the reasons why having 2 laps behind the safety car was so important. Whenever you have a red flag, they count back a lap. And so you need to have completed at least 1 lap to be able to say what the classification is. So that's why you need 2 laps. 1 for classification and 1 to get back to the pits. Which is why Mazepin got his fastest lap. Wow. Driver standings. Hamilton, Verstappen, 3 points apiece. How do you guys feel about the championship being this tight?
It's exciting. I like seeing it close, but it shows how there's Hamilton magic, that he's staying ahead somehow.
The 0.5s at the end of these drivers is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I hate it. I understand why they're there, but ugh. But as far as the championship, we see it's very close between Mercedes and Red Bull. We see that it's really close between Hamilton and Verstappen. I like it. I like that we're actually having a year where there are more than one people who could win. The last couple of years have all just been Hamilton, Hamilton, Hamilton. And I still feel like Verstappen might have been cheated out of a couple points, expecting for him to be able to rebound in the next couple of races.
So do I hear you wishing for another 2-lap one so they can balance out those 0.5s and make them whole again?
No, I want to be entertained. So that is not entertaining.
Oh, okay.
I agree with that. I want to be entertained and I want to actually see them fight wheel to wheel. So that's my biggest wish. No DNFs, no engine problems, no grid penalties, maybe rain, but just a little bit so that it's exciting for us to watch.
Just a little rain, not spa rain. Yeah. Yeah, that does bring us to the constructor standings. There's 7 points in between Mercedes and Red Bull. You have to realize that Red Bull was up 33 points. Then you had a race that Verstappen got punted by Hamilton. The next race, Bottas took out the Red Bulls, and they've been able to scrape back. It goes to show, though, if Verstappen learns from his, I'm going to call it a mistake, what happened to him in Silverstone. He had so much points over Hamilton that he didn't need to risk that one corner. Yes, he wanted to get ahead of Hamilton, but you have to think about the championship. So I'm thinking if Verstappen is able to get ahead of Hamilton again, I think he's going to allow Hamilton to fight him a little bit more and allow the strategy to be in his favor. He does not want to lose a lead again. See how far it's taken for him to claw back. He needs to hold on to the lead the next time he gets it. And based off of how well he's been going, I think he will get the lead again. We're going to now look at the driver comparison between 2020 and 2021. Dad, what was that crazy stat about pole positions over the last 8 races?
Yeah, I was surprised to find out Hamilton only has 1 pole position in the last 8 races. It seems like last year he's pole every 3 races or more.
Especially because during his Mercedes tenure of winning championships, Hamilton wins on average 1 out of every 3 races. Going into the season, if Verstappen or any other racer has any chance to beat Hamilton, you have to win over half the races that season. Because Hamilton just does not lose points. He's usually on the podium, and he's usually, if not first, second place. And so for him to have this run of events where he isn't getting the pole positions, and then we're seeing that Verstappen is out winning him. Of course, the half points is going to skew that, right? But Verstappen could easily get to that threshold, and Hamilton is going to start driving, I think, quite aggressively in the next few races because he really has to hold on to the lead.
So what you're saying is Verstappen, you think, needs to win half of the races to stand a chance, and then for the other half of the races, he just needs to not touch Mercedes. Like they got to play. They have to play keep away. If this is his car and this is his car, he needs to be this way. There should be no contact between them because Mercedes is getting quite good at playing bumper cars. Kind of terrifying, really. Somebody should tell him that this is a sport, not a carnival ride.
He can trust his team, and hopefully will, because they've been really good at pit strategies. They've been able to get ahead with pit strategies, so he doesn't have to risk like he did that one time. So I think hopefully he learned that, and they will continue their wonderful pit strategies.
Well, you bring up a good point, Dad, a few podcasts ago, where Verstappen wouldn't have had the problem at Silverstone if you didn't have the sprint race qualifying. Whoever was in second position had a much better start. And Verstappen got past Hamilton really easily when he started from second position. But then when Hamilton started in second position, he was able to ride Verstappen that whole time. I think what Verstappen needs to do when they have the next 2 sprint races, it's believed one's going to be at Monza and the other one's going to be at Brazil. Those aren't confirmed. That's just what they believe. He needs to realize to not telegraph, because if he shows his hand during the sprint race qualifying, then Hamilton is going to use that to defend those lines. It's like what Alonso did to Hamilton at Hungary, where he blocked him. Eventually, Hamilton was trying different things, but Alonso was too smart about it, and it wasn't until Alonso locked up his tire. So if Verstappen can take the Alonso approach to say, I'm going to vary my approach to see what you're going to do, and then block it off, then he could avoid giving too much, because Hamilton's just too smart and he will find your weakness and try to exploit it.
But let's give some props to Norris here. He's currently 3rd. Norris looked good last year too. So to finally be able to see some of the extra points that he's been able to get throughout the season, feel really good for him. And hopefully we'll continue to see that for the rest of the season.
Well, here's the even crazier thing, okay? Do you realize that Norris has 48 points more than last season, but he hasn't scored any points in the last 3 races straight? He, Bottas, and Perez have scored no points. They've been to the exact same positions for race after race. So somebody has got to put a good race weekend together. Come on. Which brings
and
us.
McLaren is still third on the constructors, despite Norris's poor performance lately. He's still holding them up.
Ferrari, McLaren are in a battle, and it was actually really good that Ricciardo was able to do a good qualifying. He is going to make the difference if McLaren's going to beat Ferrari, because Norris has been putting the whole team on his back. Bro is going to share with us an interesting statistic that we dug up. These are the races in which Mercedes and Red Bull only had one of their drivers score points. And there were times that those teams, neither driver scored points. So, bro, take us through this.
We've been talking about the second driver for Mercedes and the second driver for Red Bull, and Perez has been all locked up. And of course, we have the question with Perez, but I went through the different races, and we'll see that both Red Bull and Mercedes have each had 4 races where only one of the 2 drivers scored points. So we have Imola, Monza, Hungary, and Belgium for Mercedes, Imola, Azerbaijan, Hungary, and Belgium for Red Bull. And they've both actually had one race where neither of them ended up in the points, with Azerbaijan for Mercedes and Great Britain for Red Bull. This is part of the reason why the constructor standings has been so close, because 1 out of every 3 races where only one driver has scored points for their respective team.
That now brings us to our heroes and zeros, bro.
We're going to get a little meta this week. The entire race weekend could have been meme-ish, honestly. So let's do something a little different. My hero for this week is anybody who decided to use one of the Williams in their fantasy team, whether that be Latifi, Russell, or the constructor, which would have gotten you considerable amount of points. So congratulations to you if you had that foresight.
Congratulations to the 1% of all fantasy teams that actually has Williams as your constructor. Dad, your hero?
My hero is Russell. When you look at the young and upcoming racers, Norris and Russell really pushed it, and Russell didn't make a mistake. Unfortunately, Norris miscalculated just a little. But that's one reason I was so impressed with Russell, because he took it like a boss and he owned it. For him to take a car that isn't in the top 2, considered in the top 2, and put it in the P2, that was truly amazing to me.
Like a boss.
Like a boss. For a hot second, I thought he was going to put on pole position. Imagine if he had got that on pole position because Verstappen was a little slower and then got a win.
What I found interesting is that Lewis tends to be pretty vocal in congratulating other drivers, other teams when they do well, unexpectedly. But I didn't really see him going around congratulating Russell for having done so well. It was a little bit out of character for him.
It's almost like he knows something we don't know about Russell.
Yeah.
Okay, that's speculation. It was a post on his Instagram. You want to summarize it for us, Paola?
Right after the race, I read it the first time, and he basically stated that you have really good technology to be able to tell what the weather's going to be like, how long it's going to be bad out there. And he seemed to suggest that the whole thing was a farce, that they should have canceled the race. He framed it from the view of the fans. The fans stood out there all day. They should get reimbursed. Like, this shouldn't have happened. But then when I read it the second time, the language seemed a little strong. And we were talking earlier, perhaps it comes from the fact that he had nothing to lose from the race being canceled and everything to gain.
You never know when you hear anything from Lewis Hamilton. Every single time a word comes out of his mouth, there's always a little bit of, you got to take it with a grain of salt.
For me personally, I thought it was sour grapes in the U.S. We'd call it sour grapes when you can't congratulate a junior driver when they beat you in a car that wasn't as good. I think he probably wanted to get past him in the race, and therefore he was upset that he couldn't race him and get past Russell. It's starting to show, if Russell might be his teammate, that there's going to already be a little friction there.
He sat in the rain for like who knows how long, and in his mind, third place is a loss. Hamilton goes into every race thinking he can win, and he didn't even have the chance.
He's probably extra salty because, like you said, he felt like he could probably pass Russell at some point, and it was only half points, but that would have been more points that he could have had, right?
Exactly. Well, like, for example, if the race had gone on by normal, Verstappen was 8 points behind. If he got first place and Hamilton got second place, that's 8 points. But Hamilton could then get a fastest lap and still be leading the championship. Now that there's only a 3-point difference, if Verstappen gets first place and he gets second place, then now Verstappen has the championship. Moving on from Hamilton, I think Verstappen was happy. Russell was super happy. And it's great to see how Williams has progressed. It goes to show how much money makes a difference in your team. And so getting winning culture, getting actual funds to support that, and then you get a star driver who's able to put it out. And Latifi, that's 2 races in a row. Latifi has been in the points. So it's not just Russell. So good on Williams.
I think I'll go out and make them my constructor now.
You do that, and I will laugh all the way to the bank.
You do that then. I'll be looking down on you in the ORC challenge every week like this.
Watch next 5 races be in the rain and Russell get on the podium.
And in a turn of events, Williams was apparently the best choice for the next 5 races.
Okay, after that long detour, so Paola, tell us who your hero is.
My hero this week is Ricardo. Well, in contrast to, say, Hamilton, I think him getting P4 is a testament to, that positive attitude he's always showing. Doesn't matter that I've started off kind of rocky. It doesn't matter. He's barely gotten any points this season. But I think this is the race that is really showing us that he's gaining momentum with McLaren. He's feeling more at ease in the car. It wasn't an easy qualifying, so the fact that he did as well as he did speaks really well for him, and it's his best finish with the team. After the race, I looked it up, and it's also his best finish since his Imola podium in 2020. So I think he has a lot to be happy about, and I'm glad to see him hitting his stride.
See that he was happy. Did you see what he did to the crowd? He tried to make them do the wave. He tried to get the crowd excited, even though they're sitting there in the rain. So that's pretty cool to watch him engage with the fans.
I'm going to forego my heroes and zeros because I've been having a lot of opportunity to talk this podcast. So we'll swing it back around to you, Paola. Your zero.
My zero this week is Perez. I think second or third race in a row that he hasn't gotten any points. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be him. And he's not focused. Since about 4 or 5 races now, he's been really inconsistent, and any trust I had in him has kind of gone out the window.
Which makes you wonder how he ended up getting a contract extension with being inconsistent the last few races.
I think it's 2 things. Number 1, he won a race. If he had not won a race, that would be very difficult. Second, they're not going to, for whatever reason, Helmut Marko is not going to promote Gasly. So who else are they going to pick then? I just feel like Perez is the best option because he has money and sponsors, like I said at the beginning. And so Red Bull can benefit from that.
It's a teammate to Verstappen, so.
Yeah, you don't see him ruffling any feathers with Verstappen. Verstappen's comfortable with him. And when Perez can do it, he's done good, right? He outqualified Verstappen as well. Let's not forget about that. No other teammate did that over the last 2 seasons. So not only has he outqualified Verstappen, he was able to win a race, but also remember in Azerbaijan, he was blocking Hamilton pretty much the whole race. So when he gives a good opportunity, he's a good driver. He's just in the pack, and that's where most of the accidents happen. He doesn't normally qualify really well. Then you get stuck behind people. He's got stuck in the DRS train like every other race. And so he needs to start improving his qualifying so he can be out in front of the problems. Now, Dad, your zero.
That's got to be the weather. It was kind of annoying.
Which then brings us, bro, to your zero.
So I got a confession. This last couple of days, I've been kind of busy, and I actually somehow forgot that yesterday was Sunday. And so I completely missed the race, which apparently I didn't miss. So my zero of the week is actually going to be Dad. So he just bought the F1 package so that he could watch that stuff on his computer or on his TV or whatever. And he flips on the TV and bing, bang, boom, hours of nothing.
Okay.
Right. See, I didn't lose any time, but you. Maybe next week you'll get them.
Yeah, I mean, the context is the fact that I was dropping my wife off at the airport, and so I wanted to watch it so I could see it on my phone. Now, with retrospective, I could have probably just skipped it.
Yep.
Oh well.
And I did the math. It costs you roughly $2 to $3 per race, but you have to buy it a year at a time. So it seems expensive, but when you think about it,
You can't even eat for $3 at a race.
you can't even eat at $3 for a Taco Bell unless you want to eat like one thing.
No, there's a dollar menu for a reason, my guy.
McChickens.
Yeah.
Yeah, get a couple McChickens.
Look at all these secrets coming out. That's my guilty pleasure. $1 cones.
Mm.
Ooh.
$1 McChickens from McDonald's.
Ooh.
I don't eat any other fast food.
Oh, really?
The $1 breakfast menu at Taco Bell is pretty banging too.
I cannot remember the last time I ate. Actually, I can remember the last time I ate at McDonald's. It was years and years ago, and I think I had hash browns and a parfait.
That's a combo for you.
Yeah, I just had to eat breakfast at McDonald's when I dropped my wife off. I had pancakes, eggs, and cinnamon roll and some orange juice.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Getting cut from the video because nobody wants to hear about us ordering from McDonald's, okay? Nobody cares.
I like some fries and more than 2 laps, please. Okay.
And a race to eat
Every
it.
fucking toy.
Would you like to supersize your race?
Okay, so there's this funny term going along. It's called the Petite Grand Prix. That's what we saw this last race, was the Petite Grand Prix.
That's a good name for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was all over Reddit. It was hilarious. Okay. Let's go now to our It's in the Numbers, bro.
All right, folks, we've got a new set of numbers for you this week. The riddle is the numbers 6-1 and 4-9. The hint is that this will be a combination of the races of Hungary, and in quotations, I put Spa, because that was definitely a race that happened. If you think you know what the answer is and you are bold enough to put it in the comments, go ahead and do so. And if you get it right, we will let you know.
Also, to add to that, you're going to name the drivers.
Right. I suppose that would be important to know.
Let's go on to our ORC challenge. You can find us on Twitter at Relsic Racing. It'll say Pitwall. You can also go on the description in this video to our Google spreadsheet, and there is a leaderboard. Every race we put out what's called a one race challenge or an ORC. You get to submit one team, and that allows you to be able to go head to head with everyone else without having to worry about catching up a bunch of points. And we have 2 stipulations. The first is that if you use a Mega Driver, we do not take those Mega Driver points. It's just the base points so that it keeps it fair. And the second thing, the top 3 get a special podium ceremony at the end of our Race Reaction podcast. If you tie in points, the one with the lowest team value would get preferential treatment if you had to be on the podium. And so we want to give a shout out to those that participated this race. We averaged 40. This one we had considerably less, but that's because it was the first race back. And so we encourage you guys to join. We need at least 10 to be able to get the custom graphics. And so, yes, you can find the code and the link in the description for the next race, which is in 1 week. I want to give a shout out to James because on Twitter he follows and he's like, I'm so excited. I think I got number 1 on the podium. Apparently there was some glitch with the system. And so Dad, thank you for going through and manually checking every number to see who got the most because it said everyone had 0 points. But yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys on our one race challenge for the next race. And if you make it on the podium, you get your name placed on the leaderboard. Let's now take a look at our ORC Elite. Now, the ORC Elite is our computer-generated algorithm to say what is the best team that you could have had from the last race with a budget of 100 million or less. You could have had Hamilton and Verstappen on the same team. Who would have thunk? But you would have needed Williams as your constructor, who also would have thought that you would have gotten so many points with Williams. To be able to get 5 of the 6 top drivers on your team and the top constructor, that is quite impressive for only a 98.8 million budget. Now let's go to our F1 lineup for this next race. Now we might change our race lineup over the course of the week, but we want to take some time to say who do we have and who are we thinking about keeping or changing going to the next race. Dominick, I know you don't change much on your team, but at least let everybody know your lineup and what you're thinking.
So as you will see, I've got Verstappen, Gio, Sainz, Gasly, Norris, and my constructor is the Red Bull. For the longest time, I've been trying to get another driver to replace Gio, but the problem is that I have not got a configuration where I can get a slightly better driver. So I'm still trying to do some day trading, and hopefully I can get a little bit higher price here going forward.
Why don't you just pick up Russell?
You
don't need more value. You need more points, right?
It's true. Russell would definitely be a good option, so maybe I'll do that.
You know, you mentioned Gasly. Gasly was like under everyone's radar.
He was on my team.
Yeah, he's actually a solid pick this race. Well, he didn't lose any places like normal, but yeah, he did really good. Okay, Dad, you already mentioned your lineup, so
Dad said that. Dad said you need a cookie. Do you want us to go? I got some Oreos. I'll send you a pack of Oreos. You feel real good about that, huh? I will. I'll send you some milk too. I'll ship it all, and you can go have your victory cookies.
You mentioned, Dad, that you got Ferrari, so it looked like you went all in on Ferrari. You're going to keep that 3?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's on the bandwagon that they were going to bring some upgrades and they were going to really show everyone what they had, and I really went down in flames.
You said that with authority. He's like, absolutely not. Nah, fam. We ain't doing that a second time.
Okay, well, to be fair, their car didn't do good in the rain. So we weren't able to see if the upgrades actually made a difference. The engine isn't as important when it comes to rain. It's like the balance of the car. And Ferrari has had problems with their balance. Anyway, so who are you thinking about switching out for?
Well, Leclerc has just been so unstable. I thought maybe this is when he turns it around. I'm going to remove Leclerc and Ferrari and get back to my Red Bull that has shown more promise and see what I have left as far as what other driver I'm going to pick up. And I'll probably keep Verstappen, Norris, and probably Gasly and Sainz.
Well, when you say Leclerc hasn't been consistent, how many points are you expecting from Leclerc?
More than Sainz, which he's not doing.
True, especially if he costs millions more, he should be getting more points.
That's what I think.
Paola, your lineup.
I don't know that I'll make many changes this week. I have Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris, Russell, Mazepin with Red Bull. If I did make a change, I would probably put Verstappen up and then switch out Mazepin for Gasly or Ocon, depending on how practice goes.
You had Mazepin. So that means you got the fastest lap points. I was wondering who in the world had Mazepin this last race. Congrats to you.
Yeah.
But Mazepin costs less. How are you going to afford 2 more expensive drivers like Gasly?
I would get rid of Hamilton, put Verstappen, and then switch out Mazepin for either Ocon or Gasly.
Okay, this brings me to my lineup. My team 1 is my long game. I make a decision that I'm not going to make more than 2 subs per week. But the last 2 races, I did wild cards. The first one was before the summer break. This one was after the summer break because I did something really different for the last race. It was the last time I used a wild card, so I had to undo that. Team 2 is what I submit to our ORCs, and it didn't do nearly as well. And that's fine because I was trying to pick up people that were getting points. I'm going to continue doing that. Red Bull, I'm probably going to keep. Verstappen, I'm going to keep. Norris, like, he had that one accident, but he is still the guy to keep. And like you said, Dad, Sainz is pretty solid if you're getting Ferrari. I could drop Alonso or Sainz and pick someone else up if Perez looks like he might perform better. And I have the capital to use that. So I'll keep on standby when we get there. It's now time for League DRD. It's been a couple weeks since we last played, partly because Dominick is finally back in, so we'll be able to get our 4-person league together. To introduce League DRD to those of you who are listening for the very first time, DRD stands for Driver Rotational Draft. There's no money. It also is designed so that when you pick a driver, it's exclusively for you during that matchup. That way you don't have everyone with the same lineup. And so then we have a system for which the drivers that you can potentially get are rotating. We'll get more into that as we get into this discussion. You'll see how that works. But let me show you the results from a couple races ago. This is from round 10. We have two type of matches, a match of kings and a match of lords. And like I said, we will explain this further as we go. The match of lords was between Dominick and Paola. Paola gets a point for winning the king's race with 51 points. Dominick wins the court race and gets a point with 57 as a score. Congrats to both of you. You were able to split it 2 ways. Bro, you seem pretty happy about that.
Oh, I'm salty. I'm
Why?
very salty right now. Look, my strategy last time was I don't think my team's going to win the king's race, so I put my 2 guys that were going to score more points into the court race, and you know what? The strategy worked. But you know what else I'm seeing? I'm seeing that those 2 guys could have won me the king's race. Yeah, my strategy worked, but I would rather be going to the king's race than getting a point. 57 points got me 1 point in the court race. No, I'm salty right now. It's the salt is real. A horse could use me as a salt block right now.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, Paola, it seems like your strategy worked, and you're going to be facing off against another opponent in the Match of Kings this week. How do you feel?
Wonderful. I mean, I feel for Dominick because who could have guessed that Alonso would get so many points?
Alonso Ricardo combo was...
Yeah.
During the British Grand Prix, they had a sprint race, and Alonso gained so many positions during the sprint race, and then he gained a bunch of positions again during the race. In League DRD, we have a floor and a ceiling. We don't give negative points, and so if a driver goes to 0, they stop or bottom out at 0 as their floor, but then we also, to balance that out, make it so it caps out at 30. And so Alonso got max points, and Ricardo got nearly max points, and Bottas got max points as well. So good on ya. Going over to the Match of Kings, the winner of the Kings race will get 2 points because the Match of Kings is between 2 people who've already won a Kings race. For example, Paola, who just won the Match of Lords, she'll be elevated to the Match of Kings this coming race. And so it was up to Dad and me. I won with 90 points. Of course, I turboed Bottas, and Dad won by default the court race because in the Match of Kings, if you win the King's race, the other guy will get the consolation of automatically winning the court race. So, Dad, you got 7 points, and you had Vettel and Raikkonen. Are you thinking about either of those 2 guys moving forward?
Yeah, I think I don't want him on my team.
Well, Vettel did pretty good this race. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't have the League DRD, but Vettel was pretty good. Well, actually, he would have got disqualified last race. That would have been really terrible for anyone who would have had him.
So who did I end up turboing? Was it the one who got 0 points?
No, I don't think you turboed anyone because you figured I was going to turbo Bottas.
So
you decided to save it.
Save it for Dominick in the next race, huh? Yeah, well, it'll be an interesting chess game between Dominick and I. We often think too much alike as far as when to use turbos and different things, so this should be interesting.
Let's kick it over to our Google spreadsheet. This on the left shows our scores over the course of the season. Earlier in the season, we were doing a 3-man, and then Paola joined us, and so that's why it started in Austria. So we see that Dad has 3 points, Dominick has 1, I have 3, Paola has 2. So Dad and I are tied. Now you'll see credits. So how this works is if you don't win a race, you get awarded a credit, and you use credits to buy powers. 1 credit will buy you a turbo, 2 credits will buy you a mega, and 3 credits will give you a wild card. Now, in Fantasy Formula 1 Standard, a wild card is where you can do substitutions. In ours, a wild card is where you're able to buy the services of a third racer on your team. Normally, you would want to buy a guy who is unavailable. People who have an average of over 21 points per race over the course of the season are considered wild cards. They are not eligible for draft. First things first, we need to have what are called keepers. Let's begin with you, Dominick, since you have the least points in the championship. Who are you going to have as your keeper?
I'm going to go with Ricardo then.
I'll take Vettel. He's been doing pretty well recently.
Okay, now for the Match of Kings. Paola, you get to pick your keeper first.
I'm gonna go with Signs.
Very
League
solid.
DRD is the one place where I can keep my Ferrari allegiance, and
Maybe it'll pan out, right?
yeah,
Gonna have to ride Botas because this guy, because of the grid penalties, he's in the middle of the pack, which means I can pretty much draft really nice.
So Are
Okay.
we going first? Me and Dad?
Yep, so we will go with match 2. So this is how the draft of League DRD works. Based off the positions of the previous race, there is an order. For example, Dominick has Ricardo on the left. See how it's red? Now on the column, he is red. So for his second pick, it has to be within Ricardo's pairing, which would be Mazepin, Raikkonen, Perez, or Stroll. Sainz, who's more in the middle of the pack, therefore he has more race driver options. Someone like Russell, who's usually at the very bottom, is at the very top. So if you picked Russell, you could only have Perez or Stroll. You pick someone like Stroll, then you get to pretty much pick everybody. And so this shuffles every single week based off of how the race order ended. And so it really allows you for different variations and also the strategy of how are you going to draft. So let's begin. Bro, who are you drafting? You have Ricardo.
Yeah, I'm definitely picking up Perez.
Okay, Perez.
Feeling like Checo's got to have a different race this next time.
Or not. And then I'll win.
Don't say that.
Okay.
All right, well, I've been waiting for you.
Yeah, Dad, you have Sainz, so who are you going to pick?
You know, with high praises from Jeanmark, I guess I got to go with Botas.
All right, so the nice... Oh, and then you get to pick again, don't you?
Yep,
I
because it's
do.
a snake draft.
Yeah, and I promised that I wouldn't take Latifi, so I'm stuck with someone else besides Latifi.
Jeez, you think you're going to pick up Alonso, maybe?
Yeah, I think I'll go with Alonso. Thank you for that hint.
Hint? You really going to not pick up Alonso? Man, I feel like that's an easy one. Okay, so let's see here.
So since you picked up Perez, you pretty much get the whole...
Yeah, I got the whole gambit here.
The one time I was thinking about picking up Russell, way out of my league.
I know, right? I guess I'm going to go with Schumacher as my last one then.
So I'm on Alonso, right? Alonso.
Giovinazzi, Sonoda, Mazepin, Raikkonen, and Stroll.
Man, Latifi escaped all our grasps this week.
Yeah, I was sad. I left him for you, and you didn't
You can't
take him.
even do the Latifi chant. That's not an option. But maybe when it's your guys' turn.
You know what they say. The last should be first. In this case, the last will be my last pick.
The last will be last. So you picking Stroll? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Paola, I believe you got to go first.
I will go with Paris.
That's smart. I'll give you pretty much all the other options except Russell.
How did Perez end up in 19th, bro?
Because he slid. Well, let's
Wouldn't
see.
that put him at 20th? So how did he end up in 19th? You don't pass under the safety car.
Let me see. Let me make sure Perez. I actually have him here. Yeah,
Oh, you're right.
Here.
You
Perez
can't-
was in 19th, so I guess.
So how
Lance
did
Stroll,
he get ahead of Stroll then?
Maybe he didn't get passed by Stroll.
Oh, Stroll received a 10-second time penalty as his car was modified during a temporary race stoppage.
All right, bruh. You gonna pick two?
I have Botas,
Yeah,
so
except
I'm
you're
going to
not
pick
in the
up
match.
Alonso.
That's true. So I'm
That strategy is not doing anything for you.
I'm going to pick up Stroll.
All right, and Paola, you get the next. You get to pick your last two.
I'm gonna take a chance on Ricardo,
That's who I would have taken. So
and I'm going to.
Mazepin or Raikkonen?
You're gonna have to take a lot of chances.
Raikkonen.
All right, bruh. Stroll is your last one.
So then I will pick up Leclerc.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Get him with the Ferrari. Get him with the Ferrari.
Split the Ferraris.
Win or lose, you've hurt my feelings.
Oh, Dominic and Dad, Pal and I, we're going to go into the Discord and we are going to put down who our pairings are. Now remember, you got to spend credits by putting T for Turbo and M for Mega and then
How do I
W
check
for
my
Wildcard. For those listening, when you use a power-up, can only use it on one driver per team. I hear a lot of groaning, Dad. What's
Guess
going on?
who wants to go to the King's race this next week? Give you a hint. Me. I want to.
Okay, so
I
bro
think-
and dad, you ready?
Sure.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, reveal.
Perez with a T.
Put Ricardo with them.
Okay,
Okay.
and then I did
Gasly and Mick
Gasly.
Schumacher. Okay, and
And
then
then
dad
Dad
has
with
Bottas and Sainz.
and
And then Alonso and Stroll. Okay, are you ready? Paola?
Yes.
3, 2, 1, reveal. She is turboing Sainz and then Perez.
I find it interesting that
Right.
Dominic trusts Perez more and Paola trusts Sainz more.
I actually think it's more like I trust Perez to do a good enough job, and then Sainz may or may not, so he needs the boost.
Ah,
And then Alonso and Stroll in the course race.
Let me see what it looks like now that you have it put in.
and there you have it. It's great to have our swing back into the podcast after the long summer break. For those of you who may not have recognized, a lot of things happened. Our sister Sable got married. I have moved, and I now am a home owner for the very first time. Thanks, bro, for joining us tonight. Thanks, Paola, for joining us. Thanks, Dad, for joining us. And we've been your knights in racing armor. Until next time, we'll see you on the pit wall. Bye.